This is the Auditory Anthology podcast, showcasing some of the finest science fiction short stories. I am your host, Keith Conrad. We release new episodes every Thursday, and if you enjoy what you hear, I hope you will take a moment to rate and review our podcast on your preferred platform. Also, please recommend it to a friend. This will help us expand the show and keep bringing you these exciting tales each and every week. If you have a story you'd like to contribute to the series, you can visit submissions at Soundsea Concept Media, or simply click the link in the show notes. This week's tale is Prison of a Billion Years, written by C.H. Thames. In a future where society has perfected time travel, they naturally use it to send prisoners back to the primordial Earth. However, this decision brings about unforeseen consequences. Adam Slate crushed the guard's skull with a lengthy piece of iron. No one ever figured out where Slate had gotten the pipe, but it didn't matter, the guard was dead. That was what counted. And Slate, now free with a hostage, was far more dangerous. The hostage's name was Marcia Lawrence. She was 22 years old, attractive, and terrified, her mind racing with fear. Before becoming a hostage, she was a reporter for Interplanetary Video. She had been given the final pre-execution interview with Adam Slate, and she had anticipated this moment for a long time. Unfortunately, things didn't go according to plan. It had all gone awry because Slate, just hours away from the execution chamber, with nothing left to lose, had splattered the guard's brains inside his cell and marched outside with a frightened Marcia Lawrence in tow. Outside, the cell block rang with the sounds of condemned prisoners shouting and banging tin cups on bars, their voices echoing in the compound. Beyond the prison, across the dome-enclosed city that housed the facility, lay the barren land. And outside the dome, beyond the reach of the city, was nothing but rock, twisted, jagged, and towering, like monoliths left behind by a race of giants. The land stretched out, desolate under a vast sky. Steam rose from the ground, as some terrestrial waters still simmered far below, waiting for the sea to eventually claim them. This far-off sea, unlike any ocean Marcia had ever known, was devoid of salt and smelled nothing like the familiar seas of Earth. It was a strange place, with waters that evaporated endlessly, only to fall again as rain, over and over, in an eternal cycle. It was a landscape that seemed alive, yet devoid of life. That kind of scares the hell out of you, doesn't it? Adam Slate said, his voice rough. He was a big man, with a thick neck and heavy eyes, a blue shadow of a beard marking his jaw. He spoke those words as he climbed out of the prison transport, still warm from its heated journey. "I don't think anything would scare you," Marcia Lawrence replied. She had conquered her initial terror during the 5-hour journey in the clanking transport. It had taken them many miles away from the prison dome, paralleling the edge of the saltless sea, before the fuel was nearly depleted, and they made their descent toward the shore. "I'm a journalist, I can't be afraid." "Not now. I need a story," she said, her resolve hardening. "Move it, lady," Adam Slate growled. He had told her numerous times, "If you try anything, you're dead. Do you get that? I have nothing to lose. They can only kill me once, but they'll have to find me first. They won't be able to take me as long as you're with me. Stay quiet and you'll stay alive. Do you really think you can last out here?" Marcia asked practically, noticing the emptiness of the world around them. Slade didn't answer immediately. He continued walking, his steps long and purposeful, carrying the guard's gun in his left arm. They moved along the stretch of rocky beach, the pounding surf roaring in the distance. "I didn't come out here without a plan," Slate replied, a hint of annoyance creeping into his tone. "I'm not desperate. You think I'm desperate? You don't think straight when you're desperate. They can only execute me once, but if they catch me, that's it. I've got nothing to lose." They continued walking, reaching the edge of a massive cliff of black rock. Slate moved quickly, with the grace of a large animal, his eyes scanning for a way down to the coast. When he found a fault line in the rock, he grinned. "We'll follow the coastline back to the prison," he said. Marcia stared at him, incredulous. "Back?" she said, shaking her head. "But there's no food out here. There's no life." Slate smiled grimly. "It's the perfect prison. No one can escape, because there's nothing to live on. The Earth's just a baby, still forming. You escape, and you starve." Marcia considered this, her mind racing. "But you said there's no escape. No one's ever gotten out before." "There's never been a hostage before," Slate replied, a cruel smile on his face. Her mind turned over the situation as they walked along the jagged beach. "You're not going to kill me, are you?" she asked suddenly, her voice trembling. "I don't know. I've got no reason to unless you make me," Slade answered, his tone flat. They kept walking along the coast, the primordial waters surrounding them. The air was thick with moisture, and the sky, though lightening up slightly, had never seen blue. The earth itself seemed to be in a constant state of rain, the clouds always pregnant with moisture, falling again and again. The ground, soaked from the constant rain, carried small streams that rushed toward the sea. Slate suddenly grabbed Marcia's arm and yanked her against the base of the cliff as he heard something overhead. A helicopter. Marcia froze, fear flooding her again. A helicopter was circling them, searching for signs of movement. Her heart pounded, and she felt the urge to scream, but she glanced at Slate's face and held her breath. The helicopter hovered and circled, its rotor blades cutting through the stormy air. Two uniformed figures emerged from the craft and began searching the area. Marcia desperately wanted to scream, but Slate hit her, knocking the air from her lungs before she could make a sound. When she came to, the helicopter was gone, and Slate was looking down at her, unrepentant. "You okay to walk?" he asked, though he didn't seem concerned. She nodded, struggling to her feet. They moved slowly down the beach again, the storm hammering them, the winds fierce and unforgiving. Despite the chaos, Marcia knew this was her story. The only big story she would ever have, and one that she might not survive to tell. They continued on, backtracking toward the prison dome, but now, as the storm worsened, their situation seemed more hopeless than ever. Slate seemed determined, his mind fixed on the time machine at the prison. If he could reach it, he could escape. But the world around them would not make it easy. By morning, the storm was relentless, and the rain had turned to massive globes that pounded the rocks and sent violent shocks through the air. Every step was harder to take, the wind and rain forcing them to move in a desperate rush. Slate seemed almost indifferent to the storm, focused only on reaching the prison. Marcia, exhausted and soaked through, could hardly keep up. But when the storm finally began to dissipate, it revealed a still, calm sea. And though the rain continued, there was something peaceful about it. Slate, however, had other plans. As he stalked through the surf, lightning struck once more. It hit, blasting the rocks around them, and Slate fell to the ground, lifeless. Marcia stumbled over to him, her heart pounding in her chest. But Slate was dead. His body, now at the mercy of the sea, was carried away by the storm's fury. The men from the helicopter arrived shortly thereafter. They found Slate's body and confirmed his death. Marcia, too, was stunned. The storm had taken him. They returned to the helicopter, awaiting the storm's end. When the skies cleared, they went back to collect Slate's body. But it was gone, swept away by the storm. The men stood silently, staring out across the storm-ravaged sea. Marcia's thoughts were muddled. What was the story she would tell? Slate was gone, but his influence, his death, and the strange events of that day would live on. After a while, they left the shore, and Marcia felt the weight of what had transpired. Slate was dead, but the story of his escape, of the prison on Earth 1 billion years ago, would live forever.